Hi friends, I am so happy to be back with you. Welcome back to another day of the Gospel of Mark. We are on chapter 3 today, and we are going to see that our humble rabbi from Nazareth is already encountering conflict with multiple groups. There are already people who are rejecting Jesus and who are very uncomfortable with who he is and what he is teaching. He has been traveling all around Galilee, calling his disciples, healing, performing miracles, and teaching the gospel. And there are already people who cannot accept him or his message. We're going to run into 3 groups today who will all have different reactions to Jesus. And the first is the Pharisees and the religious leaders. And they reject him. We already saw some of this yesterday in chapter 2, that Jesus makes them extremely uncomfortable and he makes them feel threatened. So much so that they actually, we see in verse 6, start to go out and scheme against him with the Herodians. They start to plot how they can destroy him already here in chapter 3. It's like we're already starting to get foreshadowing of what's going to happen towards the end of the story. Already they want to get rid of him. The second group is his family. And this has always surprised me. But in verse 21 we see that his family hears about what Jesus is doing and teaching, and they go out to seize him. And they say, he's out of his mind. It turns out that Jesus' own family can't even get on board with who he is. He's even breaking their categories of what a Messiah should be like, what the Messiah should do and teach. So much so that they hear what he's doing and they think, we gotta go whisk him away before he can embarrass us further, stir up more trouble. So there's the people who reject him as a dangerous threat. There's the people who think that he's just gone crazy. And then there's this third group. And we see them at the end of the chapter. Jesus' mother and brothers show up. And this is how he responds to them. This is what he says. This is verse 31. His mothers and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered them, who are my mother and my brothers? And looking about at those who sat around him, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. I have no doubt that Jesus truly loved his biological family. But what I think he is saying here is not about his biological family, but about the new family that he is on a mission to start. A family of God's people. And this new family of God's people is going to be made up of those who earnestly desire to do the will of God, right? That's what he says. Those who earnestly desire to do the will of God, and those who want to follow him and get to know Jesus for who he actually is, not as they want him to be. Here's the thing about those first 2 groups, his family and the Pharisees, the religious leaders. I can find a lot of empathy for them. Because here's the truth. I think being the people who are inside the house, the people that Jesus says, you are my new family too, requires a hefty dose of humility and openness and trust. And what I find when I read the Gospels and get to know Jesus for who he actually is, he kind of gets in my face about some things in the most kind and gentle and compassionate way. But when I get to know who Jesus actually is and what he actually says is true, he shows me that I am wrong about a lot of things. And that not all the ways that I walk in the world are healthy or right. And that not all of my priorities are straight. And facing that requires humility and openness. Right? That Jesus might not do and say the things that I want him to do. He might not lead me in a way that feels cushy or comfortable or easy. Following him might be really costly, and that he might turn my world upside down, inside out. It requires the humility and openness to see that and still trust that even if he isn't what I thought I wanted, who he actually is better than I ever could have dreamed. And that following in his footsteps will lead me towards a life more abundant and full of goodness than anything I could fathom. And so I can have compassion and empathy for these other two groups who can't find the humility, who can't find the openness, but I earnestly desire to be the one in the room, the one at Jesus' feet, to whom he says, "You are my sisters and my brothers." Do you want to be in the room with Jesus? If you do, as we go on this journey through Mark together, I can almost promise you Jesus might get in your face and he might turn things upside down a little bit. And so can you approach who Jesus actually is with humility and openness and trust that he might not be who you thought you wanted, but he's better than anything you could have dreamed. And so is the life he has to offer us. For those of us who take him up on that offer, he says to you and I, we're family. We are family, and we have bonds that transcend anything on earth. Take care, friends.